Good afternoon, everyone. I'm live here in Dr. Amjad's office in Oak Hill, West Virginia. Dr. Amjad is the doctor that did the initial health research on Minden, West Virginia community that was dumped on. PCBs were dumped on this community. PCBs were burned in this community, which makes dioxin. The dumping went on in abandoned mines. It went on in the dumping took place in abandoned mines. There were pits that were buried. No, you all can still talk. It's fine. There were several sites that were never assessed by the EPA. The EPA tried to clean it up over 3 times and failed. And now we are in a situation where 34% of the community has either died of cancer in the past 2 years or started the fight against cancer. So I'm in here in Dr. Amjad's office. He has a lot of learning modules that I think would be helpful for anyone viewing at home to be able to see some of these things that Dr. Amjad has graciously provided for us. So let's check it out. Some facts about PCBs. PCBs were discovered during the 19th century as gasoline was extracted from crude oil. Great quantities of other chemicals like benzene were left over. Chemists started playing around with these chemicals to see if something useful could be made. If you heat benzene under the right conditions, you can glue 2 benzene rings together, creating biphenyl. If you then expose diphenyl to chlorine gas under the right conditions, you can create chlorinated diphenyls, or biphenyls as we call them today. Adding more or less chlorine creates compounds with different properties, thus PCBs came into being. Exposure pathway of PCBs in humans. Fluorescent lighting fixtures, contaminated fatty foods like fish, meat, and dairy products, inhaling toxic air near hazardous and contaminated waste sites, drinking water contaminated with PCBs, maintenance and repair of transformers, as in the case with Schaefer Equipment Company in Minden, accidents, fires, and spills from transformers. Contact with sediments from contaminated. Contact with soil and sediments contaminated with PCBs. And here's a couple photos of things that PCBs are present in. You got someone, it looks like they're taking some samples from rainwater, soil, old paints and plasters, and building residues. Effect of PCBs on human health. Various studies have found that exposure to PCBs leads to serious health afflictions. Acute effects would be skin rashes, itching and burning, eye irritation, skin and fingernail pigmentation changes, disturbances in liver function and immune system, irritation of the respiratory tract, headaches, dizziness, depression, memory loss, nervousness, fatigue, and impotence. The chronic effects are elevated risk of cardiovascular disease, hypertension and diabetes, liver damage, reproductive and developmental effects, and possibly cancer. Pregnant women exposed to high levels of PCBs in the workplace or from eating fish contaminated with PCBs had babies with lower birth weight, lessened motor skills, and weak immune systems. To explain acute versus chronic effect, acute means something whenever a person is exposed to a lot of a contaminant at once, and these would be kind of immediate reactions. Chronic means being exposed to even small amounts of a material over a long period of time repetitively, and that's what you see more of the longer lasting and more serious illness. There's a little bit of history about PCBs. By 1914, enough PCBs had already escaped into the environment to leave measurable amounts in the feathers of birds held in museums today. By the mid-1930s, Monsanto was producing PCBs commercially and licensing other companies to produce as well. In addition, PCBs had created public health problems sufficient to attract academic researchers, the U.S. Public Health Service, and several large industrial producers and users of PCBs. In 1936, the U.S. Public Health Service described a wife and child, both from whom had developed chloracne, a combination of blackheads and pustules merely in contact with the workers' clothes. In addition, they found symptoms of systematic poisoning among workers inhaling these fumes. Internal Monsanto memos documented workers who died of liver failure traced to PCB exposure. Now he has a couple placards about Minden itself. Minden, population 10 years ago versus now. 34% due to cancer. Here's a little bit about some of the demographics of the Minden area, social demographics. .34% dead due to cancer. EPA timeline. For a total of 8 years, nothing was done. Most of the time, contaminated soil was covered with tarps. Botched up cleanup scooped and spread on people's backyard as fertilizer. Oh my God. There's a little bit about the types of cancer in Minden so far that we found, which include gastrointestinal cancer, colon cancer, upper digestive system cancer, pancreas cancer, brain tumors, small cell lung cancer, lymphomas, melanomas, breast cancer. Cancer rate in West Virginia: lung cancer 81 per 100,000, colon cancer 47 per 100,000, breast cancer 111 per 100,000, non-Hodgkin lymphoma 15 per 100,000. There's a little bit of, it's actually what a PCB molecule looks like. It's two benzene rings connected, and these chlorine atoms can be attached to any point along the outside. There's actually a better little illustration of that here. See, there's your two benzene rings, and then at any of these points it will either be a hydrogen atom or a chlorine atom. Again, PCB stands for polychlorinated biphenyls. So you see it has to have multiple chlorine atoms on these two benzene rings. EPA timeline. I like how simple this is. It really sums it up. EPA likes to tout that they did some things about the cleanup, but evidence shows otherwise, and now we're paying the ultimate price for their shortcomings. It's a tragedy. A little bit more history here. In 1968, when 1,300 residents of Kyushu, Japan, fell ill after eating rice contaminated with PCBs, the world's public health establishment woke up from a long sleep and began to examine PCBs, which by this time were everywhere. PCB exposure has been correlated with liver, skin, brain cancer, and breast cancers in the last 40 years. The overall incidence of liver cancer increased 89%, skin cancer 336%, brain cancer 74%, and breast cancer 52%, according to the National Cancer Institute. These increases would be at least partially related to PCBs. PCBs are so persistent in our bodies that scientists estimate it require 7 generations of women breastfeeding their daughters with no further PCB exposures before the final daughter would be free of PCBs.
You know, I remember Dickie, but I'm getting old now.
He was one grade above Dickie. And then there was Brenda, but no one was.
See,
Wow.
I don't remember Brenda. Brenda's older anyway. Yeah, I'll be
7 generations. I've never heard the term 7 generations used to describe the amount of damage from a chemical. I've heard of people across the world referring to taking care of the earth for the 7 generations to come. A little bit more history about PCBs. How bad is the contamination? Between 1929 and 1989, total world production of PCBs was 3.4 billion pounds, or about 57 million pounds per year. Even after the U.S. banned PCBs in 1976, the whereabouts of 30% of all PCBs remains unknown. Another 30% reside in landfills and storage or in the sediments of lakes, rivers, and estuaries. Nevertheless, it is estimated that only 1% of all PCBs have so far reached the ocean. The 1% that have reached water are already causing major problems. In 1971, a group of Westinghouse staff met to discuss PCBs, and they noted that PCBs concentrate in the food chain. A memo summarizing the meeting said, "It was generally concluded that there is sufficient evidence that PCBs can be deleterious to the health of animal and human life, that the risks of ignoring the evidence that does not exist was inappropriate for Westinghouse." Yet the 1971 memo recommended continued use of PCBs. We're in Dr. Amjad's office in Oak Hill. Dr. Amjad is seeking to talk to anyone who has lived in Minden, who lives in Minden currently, or has lived in Minden in the past, even if they have moved out. So if that describes you, please contact Dr. Amjad. And his address is 225 Church Street. I'm here with a couple of residents of Minden who have gathered to talk to Dr. Amjad about this problem today. And he has set up this really good display, and I just walked you all through. Here we got some, there's Susie and Butter and a few other folks. Here, I'll just walk outside and show you all the outside of his office. This is absolutely an atrocity and an attack on the people of Minden from PCBs. Dr. Amjad has told us that he believes that Minden will be used as an example across the world as one of the few places where PCBs were dumped in this amount and left neglected. We are looking at one of the only communities in the world that was allowed to become a multi-decade experiment on humans. So, again, if you are a resident of Minden or have ever been a resident of Minden, please contact Dr. Amjad. His office is here on 225 Church Street. Please pray for the community of Minden. They are fighting to be relocated. They do not trust the EPA because the EPA and the Agency for Toxic Substances and Disease Registry, those are the two parties that put us in this position in Minden and in Oak Hill. So please pray and advocate for the people of Minden for relocation. It will take a large sum of money, I'm pretty sure, to relocate everyone, and even more to address their many health concerns. I really thank you all for watching, and I'll see you some other time. Again, live from Dr. Amjad's office on 225 Church Street. Thanks. Bye.